My topic today is changing the customer's always right policy. There is no secret that when you go into a restaurant, there's always a guest that is demanding and very stressful and very rude to an employee. Because of the customer's always right policy, employees are held to a certain obligation to make sure that every guest leaves happy, even if the employee is not happy. And that's honestly stressful. This policy should be removed from restaurants and other customer related vicinities because this policy itself is very stressful and it honestly makes it hard for an employee to come into work and cope with what's going on. Have you ever been inside a restaurant and you witnessed the employee dealing with the rude guests? Have you ever witnessed how management would just brush it off and tell the employee to deal with it? Well, they wouldn't specifically say deal with it, but they will say that, the guest is always right. There's nothing that we can do. If so, then you might be wondering why this policy is even established into a restaurant and even why employees have to deal with difficult guests and attending them considering that guests sometimes come in with bad manners and rude. I would like to persuade you that the customer's always right policy should be taken out. I am a former employee of a restaurant. I've been working for the restaurant business for about 6 years already. And I can tell you that this policy is very straining and stressful because once you get a complaint about something so minor, your management or manager looks at you and, scrutinizes you for a little thing that the guests complained about. Even though it's not even your fault, it's still the customer's always right. So why do you have a complaint? Many of us most likely have been to a restaurant or food chain and witnessed a difficult altercation with an employee with a guest, and you witnessed that the employee was stressed out. I will prove to you that sometimes guests are just plain rude, and employees having to deal with them is not right. Even stressed out to make sure that the guest is happy. Guests are sometimes rude, and they teach you ways to handle a rude guest instead of teaching you ways that you should not have to handle a rude guest. According to Westwood 10 rudest things a customer could do to make a server not want you at the restaurant, guests sometimes interrupt you in mid-sentence while you're talking and trying to take their order. According to the same article, servers aren't mind readers, and sometimes guests assume that you know what they're thinking. And when you come back without something that they wanted, they ask you, where is it, when they didn't tell you. According to the university clergy, servers have to live by the mantra, the customer is always right, which is really hard when sometimes you're faced with a rude and demanding customer. Some guests think it's just because the policy that they're entitled to act however they want, which should not be. Some guests just don't know any better. We get guests from all over the world. In some countries, guests are actually held to the you're always right, so they won't know when they're being rude and they won't know when they're being demanding, and sometimes they just don't plain know. Sometimes even knowing how to handle rude guests is still work training. Recently, now during the COVID cases, because of this, the guest is always right. Some guests feel the need to come inside a restaurant without wearing a face mask, and they get upset when you tell them to put on a face mask. According to the article by Toronto Jenna Moon, the customer's always right, but what about the staff? Customers often wander around restaurants and go by tables without their mask on and get upset when being faced and asked to put a mask on. Some guests think it's okay to come inside without wearing a mask, and get upset when you tell them. Because of that customer's always right policy, they believe they have a certain obligation to not walk in without a mask. Solution: hold the guests accountable for their actions. Yes, it's always important to make sure a guest is happy, but it's also important to make sure employees are happy as well. Sometimes jobs forget that the workers are the backbone of the establishment and they treat employees just like whatever. Honestly, I don't think it's right. Instead of scrutinizing the employee, try to view rude guests for who they are. Stop tolerating rude guests for a sale and start appreciating the workers. It's not hard to simply take one policy, especially a policy just like that, out of it. It's not hard. It honestly isn't hard to take away the customer's always right policy, because just like me, if I've been to restaurants where I've witnessed rude guests, and I know you have been to restaurants where you witnessed rude guests, and so it's just like it's draining. So review. So we learned about the policy. The customer's always right can be somehow stressful. We learned how some guests can be unreasonable and plain rude, and we learned that if this is taken away, how it would be less stressful. We could first call of action. We could first get locals around the area, like leaders, to have a petition so we could sign and get this policy taken out of not just, restaurants, but also other places. Second, we need to have a petition signed by not just employees but by guests as well. Make sure to explain why it's important and how it creates less stress for workers in the workplace. I know I'm not the only one that believes that restaurant employees are treated like less than nothing when it comes to guests, but I'm telling you that once you take away this policy, it'll be better. And that's not all, you know. These are just the many things: customer work stresses, office politics, long hours, unfairness. It's not that hard. Thank you.